someone who hasn't had dinner, you're making me very hungry, KyAnn.
Really? Oh my God, sorry. Sorry. Okay, we've got it on the right one,
Okay.
all the way, that's
Yep.
at the beginning?
It is.
Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville. I'm KyAnn Anderson. Tonight's topic, development in Somerville and what our city has in mind to rezone Union Square through the implementation of the Commercial Corridor District 55. Along with these rezoning efforts, a local Union Square landowner of the Maaco site at 444 Somerville Avenue has petitioned the city to request parcels along Somerville Avenue, falling between Church and Dane Streets, to change from strictly commercial districts zoning to mixed-use zoning designation, or CCD 55. This proposal has many of the local businesses, organizations, artists, and politicians upset over what impacts this will have on the Somerville's commercial tax base potential if this proposal was implemented. Our guests tonight are no strangers to this topic, and they're here to voice their opposition to the rezoning proposal of the Maaco parcel and its surrounding parcels. Tim Devin, our first guest, is a longtime Somerville resident and artist, as well as an active participant in the Space Equals Work initiative, an informal group of concerned Somerville artists, residents, and business owners who want to preserve the commercial tax base opportunities within our city. They have been spreading their message loud and clear as to why Somerville would benefit from keeping the existing commercial zoning intact in this area. Our second guest needs little introduction. The current Alderman of Ward 4, Tony Lafuente, has wasted no time in making his mark on Somerville politics. A long-time and successful local business owner of Flag Graphics, as well as a politician, he provides a unique perspective on this important issue and why larger-scale, innovative business opportunities would be lost if CCD 55 was approved at the Maaco site. Tonight, we'll find out a bit more about the Union Square rezoning efforts, the CCD 55 Maaco site proposal, and what members of the community can do to get involved with the worthwhile Somerville group, Space Equals Work. So please join me in welcoming Tim Devin and Alderman Tony Lafuente to the show. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
for having us.
It's not snowing outside. I'm very happy, although I complain because it's very cold. You had to go home and get a sweater, right?
I did.
Callers, we realize this is an important topic, and there are probably going to be a lot of questions out there. So I'm going to open up the phone lines tonight. Feel free to call. Give us a minute to get into things. We want to talk about the guests themselves and then just get into the issues. Feel free to call 617-928-9876. And we can do a little bit about that. But first and foremost, I always like to find out with the guests to find out why you do what you do. I mean, some of you, we know, you've been on the show before. You're a newbie, but that's okay. We welcome everybody back to Greater Somerville. Tim, you've been a Somerville resident of Spring Hill. You, your wife and son live in Spring Hill, have been there for about 1998, with a little stint in Jamaica Plain.
Yes.
Which I wasn't going to mention.
Which I regretted.
Because I'm a really big Somerville fan. So you've been here for quite some time. A native of Springfield, and you grew up on the South Shore.
I did, yeah.
Okay, so currently, you're very active in the Somerville community, but you're electronic resources, serials, and collection management librarian at the New England School of Law since 2010. But you're currently the chair of the Board of Advisors of the Somerville Arts Council since November 2012, correct?
Yes.
And more recently, you are very involved in an initiative called Space Equals Work, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But how did you get involved in that? What was the motivation there?
Well, that's a fairly new organization. We started this past summer when there were some meetings about redeveloping the industrial spine of Somerville. And one of the mock-ups had Vernon Street Studios, which is a long-standing historic studio space in the center part of Somerville on Center Street and Vernon Street. It had, the map had this area marked as condo development. And that really worried everybody. Since that has changed, so that's not really on the table anymore. But that got a lot of people thinking about long-term future of the arts community within Somerville. Verna Street Studios has been active as a studio space since the 1970s, and it was one of the initial draws of artists to Somerville. So that was really glaring and big for the community. So since then, a lot of artists, a lot of business people have been getting together and talking about long-term goals and preserving workspaces within Somerville.
And specific concerns with the development of the areas around the Green Line extension sites, which is obviously going to change the fabric a lot of Somerville and other communities for that matter. Okay, so Tony.
Hi.
Hi there, how are you?
I'm well.
You've been a long-time Somerville resident. Mm-hmm. Since how long has it been?
Well, we moved here in 1986.
1986,
so
okay.
A very long time.
You're over on Sycamore Street. But you were born in Portugal. Came to America for better life and future.
Well, that's what my parents told me, so they brought my sister and I.
And what do you think? Better life?
For me, it worked.
So you are the owner of Flay Graphics for the past 28 years. Somerville-based, 11 full-time employees. Pretty impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, we've, we came to Somerville because of Flag Graphics. We're looking for additional space, like many small businesses do, and, been very fortunate to have found a space and actually grown into 3 different spaces over the years. And the labor force was here for us, which is semi-skilled. A labor force that we've been very fortunate to have over the years. So for me, it was a great, sort of makeup for growing a business.
Okay, and most notably, I just have to mention this. Didn't you have some sort of contribution to the World Series?
Oh, just a very little bit.
Just a little bit? Tell me about that. It was just a banners,
we made we do all the work for the Red Sox. So we made the
See? Somerville, folks, Somerville. No,
we made the pennant in 2004, 2007, and obviously the one this year.
Big year, big year. There you go, right here. That's impressive. So currently, you were elected in November 2011 to Ward 4,
right.
And now you chair the Housing and Community Development Committee. Mm-hmm. And you do a lot of stuff, but you're really looking for, you want to bring positive change to Ward 4 neighborhoods, making sure that development and zoning in Ward 4 is a positive change. And kind of the things we're talking about tonight are an obvious connection. I thought you would be a wonderful guest in that, you have a really interesting, unique perspective, and it counters Tim's expertise quite well. So, so what else? Sorry, I'm switching my pages here. So, why don't we get into it? I guess if you want, well, you know what, actually, sorry. In your initiatives, one of the things I was reading in my little research that I did, you had a big, the 5.3 property tax increase. There was in the budget, working through the budget this year. So in terms of that and overall, your big concern is that people have lived in the city all their lives and continue to make Somerville what it is today, which I'd agree in terms of the new people, the old people that have been here for a while, that they shouldn't be forced to leave the city because it's too expensive to live in.
Right.
And
well, I think if you go back over the last 10 years, when we started talking about zoning and development, the one thing that everyone has always talked about is commercial development.
Yeah.
And we've seen a lot of development. Not much of it has been commercial. Therefore, we are in the predicament that we are today. And if we continue on that same road, 20 years from now, we'll be in even worse shape.
Yeah.
Because now we're actually letting go of some very good commercial stock for residential use. And it has a negative impact on many fronts. One, because it is displacing small businesses and developing businesses. Two, the arts overlay, which was created to encourage startups, is now, being played with a little bit because folks are going to have to move up, and the commercial tax base is going to be non-existent because we only have so much land.
Yeah.
So my concern is that whatever we do in the future as we move forward as a city, because I've only been there for 2 years, is that if it's going to be commercial development, we should have commercial development. In my own ward, I need business development. I don't need commercial or residential development or real estate development.
Yeah.
I need business development. We have, a wonderful vertical run on Broadway, and a lot of beautiful buildings there. We don't necessarily have to knock things down, just bring in businesses so we can create those jobs that everybody talks about. So that's my main concern, really.
And this ties in nicely to what we're speaking of tonight. So we do have some graphics, high tech as we are at Greater Somerville. We're going to just, Tim, if you want to just switch over there. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the rezoning efforts of Union Square, and then we can get directly into the Maaco site. But this map that you see here looks very complicated, but, you know, maybe, Tim, do you want to just go over quickly in the last few years, you know,
Sure, yeah.
major elements of this?
So the dotted outline is the arts overlay, which Tony mentioned.
Which is the red, correct? There's a...
It's dotted around the red, green, and purple.
Okay.
So in the left-hand part, the upper left, you'll see Market Basket and proposed CCD 55 zoning.
And that's the
Maaco's
purple
site.
with the two black squares in the upper
exactly.
left.
So that's the area that was on the table to be rezoned from industrial, from business to mixed-use residential.
But important to note, though, that the other colors and characteristics of everything else is a long time effort that the city has put in an enormous amount of time and energy into, which I think very successfully creating this rezoning effort in the anticipation of the Green Line coming, making sure that, you know, some of these areas, as you can see at the bottom of the legend there, they start getting some quite higher buildings, you know, TODs, transit-oriented developments, and specific areas that, you know, we could benefit from, you know, building them a little bit more dense. Whereas the red is specific to the main streets of Union Square, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tony, wanting to maintain a certain element to the characteristics that you currently see in Union Square, not going too high, but, you know, what is that?
Well, that, you know, the CCD 55s limits the buildings at 55 feet. Now, that does not mean that the developer will always build up to 55 feet, but that's the maximum. And when you look at Union Square, there are many buildings that, you know, sort of fit that mold.
Yep.
And, you know, there is a fit in some areas, but the one thing we don't want to do is deplete real estate that's very important to us in order to create the CCD districts.
But the red area is essentially the CCD 55.
Right, correct.
Okay, so that's where you would be seeing. Whereas in the browns and the oranges, you're actually looking at some higher buildings. There's some little bit more dense transit-oriented developments.
Correct.
Okay, and then in the upper left, as Tim was mentioning, just to kind of orient people, so that overall district has been, you know, planned by the city for a number of years and approved. And then now more recently, the purple in the upper left is what a gentleman who owns 444 Somerville Avenue, the Maaco site, proposed to then take that portion of the purple up there right near Market Basket, for those of you who need to orient yourself, and create that purple portion would then become red, essentially, because it would then be allowed to go to 55 feet. Right.
And it also includes Market Basket.
And it includes Market Basket.
I think, an important point.
It is. No, that's a good point. So basically, it would allow to go to 50 feet, as well as it would switch from simply a commercial zoning to be the CCD 55, which would be mixed use, which would then bring us into condo land.
And it also includes the cemetery because they need a lot of condos there.
Yes, I hear that. So anyway, so that's just a little bit of the background so you understand. But let's talk a little bit about the Market Basket, because it's a very good point that you bring up, Tim. So, you know, obviously we know things, there's been a little bit of family strife going back and forth between that business, and a lot of us are kind of curious as to whether that, and maybe we don't know that tonight, but whether is that building even going to be there in 5 years? Because I think if it were to leave and be pushed, if it was to turn to CCD 55 and then some, you know, developer were to buy it, there would be a complete I mean, that's a big grocery store that feeds a lot of people of all socioeconomic you know, levels. Yeah. Any word on that? Do we know if that's?
Well, I have not heard anything about it closing. If anything, I do know that they are interested in acquiring some land for additional parking, which is not going to happen. But I know that they have approached someone that I know that has a business for that. So that tells me that they don't have any intentions of leaving, but I
Yeah.
don't know for sure.
So it's, okay, so maybe if we want to just switch
Sure.
this back here, we'll talk about some of the other things in a minute. But, so one of the things that I, thought to bring up is like who directly benefits from this CCD 55 initiative. Obviously, the gentleman who owns the Maaco site, we obviously have a lot of condos in this area, and I think that we all can speak for that. But, what's the benefit of doing this?
Yeah, so that's the concern that I have. I mean, obviously the developers and owners benefit because they already own something, they work out deals, they make a fair amount of money, of course. I think the city long-term doesn't really get much benefit because most of it is residential tax. There is a small portion on the first floor that is retail that goes to commercial, of course. But we're losing a total entire area from commercial to now residential with a little bit of commercial. So the balance really isn't there. And I've got some concerns about that. The other thing is when we're looking at jobs, when you take retail jobs are just not as strong as commercial-based jobs, whether it be startups hiring local people, whether it be companies or businesses moving in from other areas and bringing in their labor force and then growing here like I did and creating jobs for local folks. I think that's much more powerful than just having 100 condos or apartments with some retail.
The retail down below, because the CCD development, the overlay does allow for the retail on the bottom level. Now, Tim, you had mentioned that there's a gentleman, or there's a, obviously your space equals work. You're kind of gathering everyone to kind of to this cause to make people aware that we do, if this proposal, it should be noted though that the actual Maaco site, the original developer proposal was recently withdrawn, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and from what I've heard,
From what I've
it's
heard as
being
well.
revised.
It's being revised. Oh, it's not withdrawn completely. Okay, so it's
It
being
was
revised.
withdrawn, but it's being revised.
I just heard that it was withdrawn, so
Withdrawn.
I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess the point is, some people are like, well, why would you even have this show because this, proposal has been withdrawn? And I think the thing here is that we all know that developers are coming. This
Sure.
is a wonderful place to live. There's a lot of reasons to come to Somerville, but I think we need to prepare and make sure people are aware of these changes that could happen. And Tim, tell me a little bit about there are businesses back there currently that could, they're leasing or they could potentially be forced to move if this implementation
Absolutely,
happens?
yeah. And I think it would be maybe helpful if I just run through the list of who's there. Right?
Yeah, because a lot of people don't.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a maker space by the name of Pirate Ship, which is also called Public Lab. And so it's a maker space, much like Artisans Asylum, so inventors, innovators who rent a space together, and then there's an energy there, right? You're working on something, you're working on something, I'm working on something, we bounce ideas back and forth. Public Lab, which is part of Pirate Ship, as I mentioned, is funded by MIT and by the Knight Foundation. I mean, that's a huge thing, right? That is an innovative space that has won awards, is doing all kinds of innovative things. You have art studios there. You have music studios there. You have Union Press. Union
Press is great.
Yeah, exactly.
They do a lot of wonderful things
Exactly.
for the city.
So they're for those that don't know, they're a sort of fine art letterpress. They do a lot of posters, award-winning place. There's also there's a new yoga studio there. There's B Yoga, yep, which just moved from Block 11 down the street, expanding its business. There's the karate school. There's Little India, which is sort of a focal point of the local Indian community. It's a liquor store, but it's also an Indian food shop, right? And there's Market Basket, and all of those places are within the zone that's being considered to be rezoned. So there's a lot going on there. And so these are jobs that are lost, right? There's people that work there. Artists are workers. Artists work, right? They get paid for what they do. They spend money. They pay rent. Musicians are workers as well. I think that gets lost in the mix. A lot of people just think of artists as not really having businesses. They're small business people, right? So Union Press, small business, all these artists, small businesses. And so that stands to be lost. One of the slides that we were talking about was, can I take over?
Yeah, no, take over.
Okay,
Cool.
Tim Devin's show. So the number of jobs, so I'm just looking through the slides right here. So if you look at local per capita
Now you gotta flip it up there.
employment.
See, you think you're still a rookie. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
If you look at Somerville relative to other
And
areas.
Somerville's in the blue, the darkened one there. I'm just showing people because people
Okay.
will not be able
Yeah,
to read
great.
it as easily.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're over to the right, and so basically what this means is that there aren't many local jobs, right? That people work in other towns, so you are a worker in another town and they get the commercial taxes from your work, right? So Somerville is missing out if we chase jobs away.
And
We're
Boston
missing
and Cambridge and Waltham, Lexington, those are all
Yeah,
the top
absolutely,
runners. So yeah,
absolutely.
we're definitely, and we can flip through a couple of those other
Sure,
ones if
yeah.
you want. I mean, these slides are just meant to inform people that, you know, when it comes to, I mean, this shows the job creation in Somerville has been essentially been static for the past 20 years, and these are the levels. As you can see, it really doesn't. It doesn't seem like it's moving anywhere. So if this parcel, you know, like we were talking about, goes into the CCD 55, it's going to become more condos and a couple commercial areas. I don't think that number is going to really move all that much. And I think the more powerful graphic, and Tim, if you want to switch to the pie chart, you know, let's be honest, folks. That white portion is the residential, and what's the percentage on that? If for those people who can't quite read,
That is 68%.
68% property type of Somerville is residential, and commercial is, it looks like 12 if I squint my eyes.
And industrial is 6%.
You know, and I think that one of the things that we're all saying here is that, you know, that obviously Somerville is a great place to be, but it also wants to be a balanced place where, you know, to live, raise a family, you know, work, live, raise a family. And I think the work part is really obviously not balanced here, you know. We've got plenty of people living here, but not a lot of working here. And I just think those are really wonderful graphics. Maybe we switch back.
Sure.
So we talked a little bit about the, that, so they're, you know, maybe reworking this. My question is, you know, these people, like, what happens now, you know? So it has been withdrawn, and perhaps they're going to put it up to be, you know, reproposed. So in order for the community to get involved, you know, it's wonderful to have, you know, groups such as Space Equals Work that people can find on Twitter, on Facebook. All these links will be on our website. You can find those tomorrow when we post this. But, you know, what are the community meeting that I believe was last month was postponed. We now have some new elections, or we had the elections last year, which is really quite exciting. We've got new Alderman in place here. So, you know, Tony, what are your thoughts in terms of, obviously, you know, people can get involved, but I don't want to say does our voice really matter, but in this type of a position, you know, what do you recommend would be the best?
Well, I obviously, I
outreach?
think that some of the public hearings that we've had on it, and those of us that are on the planning, the land use committee, feel very strongly about what's going on development-wise in the city. So if there are other proposals coming in about the Maaco site, I think it's extremely important that folks come to the public hearings and voice their opinion, because it does count.
Yeah.
It really does count. I mean, and I think that, you know, as new aldermen come in next year, I think you're going to see folks engaged in a different way. And that's all very positive for the city. Because I don't think it's not about, you know, being against something or for something. It's about making things better.
Yeah.
You know, there are certain areas where CCDs fit. What my concern with it is revenue loss, property loss, not having a balance, and engagement from neighborhoods that are being affected. The way that the present way that it works is it just goes to the planning board. There's no more zoning board of appeals. It really does cut, I think, having gone through it a couple of times, it cuts involvement by neighbors, and they really shouldn't. I mean, neighbors and neighborhoods should have a direct say on what goes on in that area and have a voice on it. CCDs, just because it goes for a special permit and not any zoning relief, really does cut out, to a certain extent, neighborhood input. And I just don't think that's good. So that's my biggest concern with it.
And now, Tim, what about you? I mean, where do we stand in terms of, are there other community meetings or things that the people at home would be able to, go on your website and find out?
Sure, yeah. So if you go to spaceequalswork.org, you can stay up on our doings. But one thing that I wanted to say is that, well, two things I wanted to say. One thing is that we just organized 6 months ago. The arts community, some business people, we organized, and we have gotten our voice out there, and everybody can do this. Just go do it. Somerville is a small town, and you can make your voice heard. But one thing that I wanted to say is, in order to be able to make a voice heard, in order to be part of the conversation, you have to know what's going on. And nobody really knew about this rezoning initiative. Someone who was part of Space Seagulls' work found out about it in August. None of the tenants knew about this. We had to go to the tenants and tell them about this. And that, to me, was deeply concerning. The original, the PDF that has the rezoning initiative laid out in it is not linked to on the city website. We found it just by happenstance through Google. We showed it to some people. They missed the 2 lines in the PDF that explained this. So one thing that I would really love to come out of this conversation, if I could, is, this is all public knowledge, right? Is if we could make it more public. I think that would be really, really awesome.
Actually, something just came to mind, because property owners are notified by writing. The ones that aren't typically notified is the businesses.
Sure.
And I think that's what what you felt there, and that might be something that I would bring up with some of my colleagues
I would
to
love
see
that. That would be great.
if, especially when you are talking a commercial area where businesses are directly impacted and not just the property owners.
And this is definitely not going to be the first time that this comes up. So I think, in the couple minutes that we have left, I just want to make sure we mention that, there's really a lot of development going on in Somerville. And I think that, this is the beginning of a change, a big change of what's going to come when the Green Line extension comes through and all these developments start changing over. And I do commend the city for all the efforts that they've placed to make, to plan this so that it's an anticipated development. However, I think by these pie charts, everything that we've shown, it's obvious that I don't know if we need more condos. But again, you can find out all this information, and again, I would recommend everybody pass this video on and this effort on so that you can get in touch with Tim or Tony or your local alderman. I'm just going to have to wrap up because we're out of time. You wanted to say something?
I did.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Sorry.
So one of the reasons that condos are so appealing, right, is because land in Somerville is becoming worth more and more, because people want to move to Somerville, right? And part of that, the reason for that, is Somerville's creative community, which has created a buzz around Somerville. Somerville's local businesses, which has created a buzz around Somerville. We're in the Globe constantly. People talk about Somerville constantly, right? People want to live here, right? And so this is on the backs of thousands of people who've worked dozens and dozens of years to make Somerville what it is. We should not be selling that out for condos, okay? We should not be selling piecemeal the workspace of the small businesses, of the artists, of the musicians for condos. That doesn't make sense. It's not a smart thing to do.
I'd like to thank our guests, Tim Devin and Tony Lafuente, for coming onto the show this evening and to share their opinions on the CCD 55 rezoning initiative, the Maaco site proposal along Somerville Avenue in Union Square, and why we as a community need to speak to our elected officials about why this proposal does not hold the best interest for the Somerville community and its commercial tax-based potential. Countless of local artists and hundreds of thousands of square feet of potential innovative commercial space and tax-generating revenue will be permanently lost in Somerville if this proposal is approved. While the CCD 55 proposal does allow for smaller commercial spaces, the larger scale commercial buildings would be eliminated and replaced by, you guessed it, more condos. In an already saturated residential market, as we've seen here tonight, I ask the viewers at home, does Somerville really need more condominiums? Please check out our Greater Somerville blog for all of tonight's information, and I encourage all of you to get involved and be aware of this worthwhile cause, Space Equals Work. Let's keep Somerville a balanced place to live, work, and raise a family, now and for generations to come. That does it for us tonight. Thank you to the viewers at home for watching. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed. Good night, everyone. Okay.
Great. Good
That was
job.
Great.
Hey, tell Wendy to change the clock.
I know, right?
I can leave this here?
You can leave
It
that
was
here.
very nice meeting you.
That was wonderful.
I'm sorry I have to
no,
run.
run. I think we just hit it home. I feel good about it.
Yeah, good.
You know what I mean?
Well,
I
we'll see
just
what kind
think.
of reaction you get.
Yeah, right, I know.
what I'm going to get tomorrow, Thursday.
Thank you very much for coming.
Pleasure.
Okay, bye, Tony.
Okay, good to meet you. Well, thanks for doing this, KyAnn. This was great.
Welcome. Stop recording. I want to make sure I do this one touch copy.